What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel for the finale of What If Padme Amidala Survived Revenge of the Sith. As stated at the end of the last video, this one is going to pick up right from where that one left off. If you haven't seen that video or the two before that, they are linked in the description, but without any further ado, let's finish this. Master Yoda remained on Dagobah. He was too old to bring any value to this battle. He'd passed on all he knew to the next generation, and this was their fight. He sat quietly in the forest, sensing a great disturbance in the Force. He could feel the Emperor's power from across the stars. His presence began to cloud everything. For a moment, Yoda had been able to feel everyone. Luke, Leia, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Palpatine, Skywalker, and all of the Inquisitors. But now, all he sensed was Darth Sidious. His power overtaking everyone else's until the Force itself was nothing but darkness. But then, a flicker. The smallest flicker of light in the pitch black night. He wasn't sure if he sensed the present or the future, but somehow there was hope. Back on Takodana, the Sith stood victorious once more. Darth Vader hadn't let Palpatine leave with Padme, but they could settle that dispute later. Palpatine had done much worse to him in their time together. Vader's act was a reconcilable offense, and he refused to betray his master in favor of the Jedi. He was conflicted, but he had to obey his master. His fear of the Emperor was simply too great. Palpatine stood with his hands folded as Ahsoka and Obi-Wan laid lifeless on the ground. In the distance, the bodies of 3 Inquisitors did the same, defeated by Luke and Leia, but now the twins stood before the Emperor, brought before him by Lord Vader himself. Palpatine valued the son of Skywalker, but the girl was of little interest to him. He pulled Vader's lightsaber from his belt with the Force, igniting it and placing the blade at the girl's neck. Behind him, Padme knelt in the dirt, restrained by 2 stormtroopers. Tears flooded her eyes as she gasped for Anakin. He did not move, but he stared intently at Padme as she mouthed 3 words. "She's your daughter." The expression on Padme's face was one of pure desperation. His family needed him. Anakin remained frozen. She couldn't tell if he'd received the message or not, but she'd done what she could do. Her children's fate now lied in their father's hands. Palpatine glanced to Vader, looking for a sign of weakness, and then he ripped the saber backwards before striking down toward the girl. But his momentum was stopped abruptly before her head. Palpatine smiled. Darth Vader was weak. Anakin thrusted his hand forward, his power not directed at the Emperor, but at the weapon in his hand. He marched forward as he struggled to turn his lightsaber inward, back at his master. Luke reached toward the surviving Inquisitor who stood behind them, retrieving he and his sister's sabers. Leia ran to free her mother, while Luke turned to take on the white-faced assassin who now ran toward him. Anakin used his offhand to reach for Kenobi's lightsaber, pulling it from the empty robes that lied on the ground and swinging the weapon downward as it connected with his own blade, which the Emperor now wielded. Obi-Wan's hilt felt good in his hands. The kyber crystal within accepted him immediately, like a warm welcome home. He allowed that feeling to guide him as he pressed forward, but it would not be enough. Palpatine's power was unlike Vader's past opponents, a reality he was well aware of, a reality that had kept him pinned at the Emperor's side for all this time, but one he could no longer tolerate under these circumstances. Palpatine switched the saber off and quickly ducked out of the way, allowing Vader to stumble forward as he slipped behind. And then Anakin was pummeled by more Force lightning, these strikes far more intense than any he had felt before. Having taken out the Grand Inquisitor, Luke and Leia charged for the Emperor, but he turned, striking them both with all of his hatred before turning back to his failure of an apprentice. But as he did, a flash of white sprung toward him. He moved swiftly, avoiding the brunt of the attack, but one of Ahsoka's sabers caught his leg. Lady Tano lived, and the Emperor was now injured. He was not a machine, but a man, just like the rest of them. He struck Ahsoka with more lightning. He ducked as Luke struck for his head, spouting off another blast. He leapt into the air over Leia, delivering another strike of energy toward her as he descended. Anakin watched as his children struggled alongside Ahsoka to take the Emperor down. He looked for Padme, but she was nowhere to be found. He struggled to breathe, clinging to life as he remembered all of the lies Palpatine had told him over the years. The Emperor had taken everything from him, and now he threatened his family, the people Anakin had vowed to love and protect. And instead, he'd betrayed them. But not anymore. He would do whatever it took to save his family. Anakin Skywalker rose to his feet, driven not by a thirst for revenge, revenge, but by determination to protect his family. Palpatine whirled around as the sky suddenly grew dark to see his apprentice standing with his arms raised into the sky, but there was no sky to be seen. Instead, a massive wave from the lake behind them hovered above. Vader let go, allowing the water to come crashing down before the Emperor could strike him again, and as he did, he threw Luke and Leia out of harm's way with the Force. The Dark Lord choked and struggled to gather himself as the water receded. He looked up to see Darth Vader, now standing just a few yards away, untouched by the tidal wave, and now raising a plethora of boulders into the air, firing them at Sidious. Anakin ripped a statue from the castle behind Palpatine and threw it toward him while continuing to pelt him with boulders. Skywalker had been reborn. Anakin now charged at his faltering enemy. Sidious ignited Vader's lightsaber once more as the monstrosity he'd created swung toward him. And then, a miraculous move. Anakin dropped into a slide, powering his blade off just before the sabers were about to clash, and then reigniting it on the other side of Palpatine's blade as it sliced through the Emperor's chest. Anakin paused, remaining on one knee as Palpatine's corpse collapsed to the ground. Luke and Leia now approached hesitantly from off in the distance, still wary of the machine of a man who just saved their lives. And behind Anakin, two more figures. Ahsoka stopped while Padme continued to approach carefully. Anakin felt like there was a house weighing on his chest as he fought to breathe. Gently, Padme laid her hand on his shoulder. Anakin embraced the warm feeling, but then he stumbled again, catching himself on his hand before collapsing into Padme's lap as she softened his fall. Her children moved in, each of them kneeling beside their father as he slowly removed his mask. He was dying. Nothing could save him now, but that was quite alright with Anakin. The family shared a moment together, an interaction that the twins couldn't fully appreciate, but one that meant everything to their parents. Anakin took a good look at each member of his beautiful family, hoping they could one day forgive him for the darkness he had brought upon them and the rest of the galaxy. And his final sight before his death was that of his own apprentice. Ahsoka stood before the family with pride, exchanging a small nod and a smile with Anakin Skywalker before he slipped away. Another long moment passed, and then his suit went flat, just like Obi-Wan's had. Anakin's body disappeared as he transcended into the Force. The battle in the sky had been over for some time. Padme's influence had contributed to the amassment of a tremendous army, and that army would not sit back to wait and see what the Emperor did with their leader. Without hesitation, they'd come to her aid with fire in their hearts, prepared to die to save Padme. Many people lost their lives, but today the rebels prevailed, both on the ground and in the air, thanks in large part to Anakin. Padme wouldn't quite call it a victory after all of the lives that had been taken, both on this day and in the years that the Empire progressively consumed more and more of the galaxy, but the fight was done now. Many months had now passed since the sacrifices of Obi-Wan and Anakin. There was peace across the stars, but still Luke and Leia continued to train, now collectively assuming the Skywalker name and carrying the Jedi legacy. Yoda and Ahsoka lived on, continuing to guide their powerful students, but this was not their story to write. Padme, of course, was more proud than anyone to watch her children create their own paths in their father's name and pave the way for future generations of everyday heroes and Jedi alike. And that, my friends, is where this story draws to a close. Now, before I close this video out, I just want to say that this was quite the interesting finish to try and pull together, and I'm sure it sort of goes without saying that this is just one of many different ways that this story could have gone, but I sort of just ended up choosing a direction and then the story kind of writes itself from there, so I hope you all did enjoy what I came up with. If you did enjoy this series and you'd like to see more of my content, remember to drop the video a thumbs up before you go, subscribe, click the bell button, and until next time, remember, the Force will be with you, always.